Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I have Rafael Cortez. Rafael, how you doing today, man?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. I think we've known each other at least as acquaintances for a few years now, and it's good.
Right.
It's good. Like I always love some of these podcasts. Like there's an opportunity to, like, selflessly to kind of put some content out there for other people, and selfishly to, like, experience it myself, which is cool. So.
Isn't it crazy? Like the type of conversations just, having a podcast will allow you to have. Like it's wild to me. I mean, it just opens up opportunities. So I'm right there with you. I do the same.
Sure. Totally agree. So for anybody who doesn't know you, I was just learning about like the different businesses you have, what the structure looks like and stuff like that. But yeah, could you share like the brief overview? Like who are you? Where you come from? What do you do?
Yeah. So my background, I used to be a firefighter. I left the fire department to launch my first business. This is back in 2007. Then the first business was a non-emergency medical transportation. So I kind of stayed on the business. So I kind of stayed on the same vertical of, EMS and providing, medical services and that sort of thing. After a while, around 2009, I wanted to deploy some cash that I kind of, that I had, right? So I saved some money while I had the company. And I wanted to deploy some cash. The only thing I kind of figured I knew how to do as far as investments or making money work was to swing a hammer, because I used to work construction back in high school and in college. Yeah. So I was like, all right, cool, let's go flip a house. And I'm telling you, man, like I real estate hit me, and I thought it was a one way, like this is you flip a house and you're that's real estate, right? And then as I got into it more and more and more, I started discovering that there's so many different ways to play in it. And eventually I launched Pulse Capital, which is my wholesale fix and flip business. I'm a real estate broker as well in Phoenix. So my agents do real estate investments as well and that sort of thing. And I own CEO Pulse, which is my organizational psychology practice. So I kind of developed it may seem like it's different verticals, but they all talk to each other at the end of the day. So I do a lot of coaching, consulting as well on the real estate and wholesaling space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems supernatural. You got into real estate because you know how to swing a hammer, and it sounds like that's mostly what you do day to day now, right?
Yeah, dude. I mean, such a big mistake swinging the hammer myself at the beginning of it, bro. But that's a train of thought. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get it. It's so funny sometimes how like what gets you into something and the reason you stay are completely different things.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I actually had a similar conversation with my wife the other day where I was like, all the reasons I initially wanted to marry you are great and I still believe in those, but like, it's all the other reasons why I'm still here.
Yeah, the discovery process is amazing, man.
Yeah. So that sounds like quite the journey. So I want to make sure we extract all the information out of your brain. We talked about what you're passionate about. And one of those things was the systems and processes in your business, which is almost like a curse word to an entrepreneur sometimes. Right? Yeah. Like a lot of entrepreneurs. Some of us like that. Some of us don't. But tell me from your standpoint. I mean, we've had a lot of people who like focus on systems and processes on this podcast. We had a few people from Sharper. We just had Ben Montlocker on a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about that in a pretty high level. It's cool. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, like what might you disagree with those other people on?
It's not necessarily that I disagree with what's going on or what's being taught, right? For example, a lot of stuff that and I went down the ringer, right? So one of the first books that kind of cracked my skull open when it came to systems was the E-Myth, right? Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. And then you go into traction, which I actually had the pleasure of having Gino Wickman on my podcast. Again, it's just wild, the type of conversations that you end up having. But I feel like every business is going to be different, right? There's individualities to everything that we do. For example, I may be collaborating with somebody else who has a similar business than mine, but the nuisances, they're going to be different, right? So there's always little things that are going to make the process flow better, and that's where systems and processes really come in. Like, I didn't understand that the freedom was in having those things dialed in. I mean, the fact that you can step away from your business, be in a trip in Puerto Vallarta, which this just happened over the weekend, and then just keep getting emails that, oh, deal locked, or escrow closed, and you're out there on a beach somewhere. I mean, that stuff is like, that's, to me, that's a big prize about having an operation that runs, right? The important thing to understand is that you can't have that. You can't disconnect to that degree. Not that you're, forgetting about the company and stepping away completely, but you can't have that cushion of freedom per se if you don't have accountability and SOPs in place. So to me, I mean, it just became a common sense. I've always been a lifestyle entrepreneur. If I'll protect my time, maybe more than my pocketbook. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it works for me. So yeah, I mean, it's I think it's part of that leveling up thing, and it opens you up too to do bigger things, better things, and like really expand, right, as a human being.
Sure. It's that last thing you said that like made the difference for me personally. Like if I'm just looking at my business, because like for me, I never really like had the desire to go sit on the beach while my company is closing deals and stuff. Not that like now I realize that that's a valuable thing, right?
Yeah.
Come around a little bit, but like my motivation of getting like the business operationalized was never that. It was just you hit a ceiling of what you can accomplish in the business, even if you're willing to work unlimited
bandwidth.
hours.
Right.
Yeah. Where like you just have you personally can only do so much, and to the extent that things rely on you, yeah, you either have the ability to like grow and step back, or maybe to grow more and invest into it. But yeah, I've so that for me, like what at some point I just realized like there's no way to continue to grow this if like I'm the limitation to the growth.
Yeah, you become the bottleneck. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
like I
Like you,
mean,
this wouldn't exist
yeah.
without you. It wouldn't have had any revenue without you at a certain point, and then at some
Right.
you're the person actually holding it back.
Yeah, especially when we're bootstrapping something. I mean, and going through the ringer right at the beginning, we're the end all be all, and I feel like sometimes we can get enamored with the idea, right? That okay, I'm the boss, I'm the end all be all here. Like I have all the answers, and that works to an extent. I actually got burned out during my first business, the transportation business. I like, my mindset was all jacked up. I got to a point where I was exhausted. I got tired. I didn't want to come into the office, and that's absolutely not like me, man. Like I was working with some of my best friends because I hired them. They, my one of my best friends from high school was my director of operations over there. So it's like coming to a group of buddies, and I didn't want to do that because I was the bottleneck at that point. So all the problems were going through me. I wasn't really delegating much. I had people in places, but I was still having, I still had them on a crutch per se, right? Because they couldn't fix things without me, and I had to approve everything, and it's just like the systems weren't there, and inevitably I got to a point where I got exhausted. It's a matter of bandwidth. Like it's not that you can't do it. The intellect, might be there and whatnot, but at the end of the day, dude, like you're gonna have enough energy for so many problems a day, and if you're wasting that energy on a bunch of small little problems, you don't have time to look up and see the big possibilities, right? And that was a big lesson for me. So I went into a rut for like 6 months or something like that, and then I like, something's got to give. So I started kind of letting go of the baby a little bit. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, sure enough, it started working better. That's when we actually started moving forward and making the business sellable. But yeah, it hits you on I think at all levels, right? Like it hits you at an emotional level. I mean, the stuff at home wasn't necessarily good at that point too, because I wasn't good. So my mindset wasn't there. I was absent at home even when I was hanging out with the kids. I was still thinking about the problems at work, and then we get to work and I didn't want to do anything because I was burned out. So it becomes this catch-22 of just crappiness and yeah, man, like it's a scary place to be in.
Yeah. I wonder if there's anybody like wise enough to not go through that growing their business. Like I get how if you've been through that, you could now build a business and not, but from the beginning.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a rite of passage, dude. Like we feel an ego gets, in the way when you start building stuff, right? Like the ego gets kind of thrown out of proportion internally. It's like, okay, I got this, I can figure this out, and then we start to. There's a saying in Spanish, and I'll say it and I'll explain it. But el que mucho abarca poco aprieta. So the wider you grip, you have your arms out and you're trying to grip something. The strength is not going to be as solid as if you have something that you're closer, right? The closer you grip, the stronger you are. So it's kind of like the context of that thing, and I never understood it. I was just spread all over the place, and I feel like I thought I could handle a lot of things, and I just didn't know what I didn't know. So I mean, and I've seen people, and especially in the masterminds when we start having conversations with, rock stars, right? Like we get to be in a lot of the same circles where you walk into a room, man, you're looking up to these people. It's like, dude, I just read your book, and that kind of stuff. And I feel like they all go through some type of catalyst. I feel like it's almost like a baptizing of entrepreneurship, if you will.
Sure. Well, it's one of those things that when we think about it, it's I know no better vehicle for personal growth. Like that's basically how it
Yeah.
works. Like that's how people grow. Like the business throws all this weight on you, and either it's going to crush you, and that'll be the end,
Right.
or you're going to become strong enough to bear that weight. And at some point, you'll look at that amount of weight and say, "That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's easy." It's not that the weight gets lighter; it's that you get stronger.
Yeah, you get stronger and a little better day by day, and at the end of the day, like I feel like it clarifies the path too. At the beginning, I was very very much money focused, right? So I wanted to hit an amount, and what I didn't realize is that like after I hit the amount that I was looking for, like the first time, I was still operating under that same premise, right? So there wasn't really a lot of fulfillment. It may sound cliche, but it's really what happened to me. There wasn't a lot of fulfillment, at a personal level. I just kind of, I moved the goalpost. That's all I did. And I would, okay, hit that amount, that amount. And so you do it a couple of times, and like for the sake of what? You know, I'm missing memories. I'm missing vacations. And this is the kind of stuff that matters to me. I'm a very social dude, and I like to chill and relax and have, stuff running on the background, right? And I wasn't privy to that because I was right in the middle of it, becoming the bottleneck for it. So I brought that lesson in from that business into the real estate space, and right out of the gate, the first things that I started to do was documenting, reverse engineering everything, because that's what I learned to do on that one. So it's not necessarily that I came in with this sixth sense, and I was no, I mean I'd already gone through the ringer on something else.
Yeah, that makes sense. You develop the skills. So now this other business start, which should have been like really, really hard to start, it's theoretically a little bit easier because you're more the person who can accomplish that thing.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the skin was already there, and I knew that okay, there's a lot of stuff that I'm gonna go through, but I have no idea. I'm gonna have to figure stuff out as I go. Right? There's no real model, especially when I got started in 2009, 2010. No real model to follow. I mean, there were some ways of finding deals and selling stuff, but like an actual structure to business blueprint per se wasn't necessarily out there. So going through it and designing, I mean, I came in with the awareness that there was a lot of stuff that I was gonna have to figure out going through it.
Yeah. So if we were to look at this, like to use your word, like blueprint of a business, and I were to put your blueprint of your business next to many others in the industry, what would you say would be distinctly different about yours?
I've always been. I mean, I have three key principles, right? So I try to keep it simple. There's accountability in every single lane. I break it down by lane. So I do have the typical. I have 6 stages, right, that we follow. So one is sourcing leads, the other one is acquisitions, dispositions, and then I have measuring and improving. So there's a couple of things that I do extra on the regular, like this is with every deal. It's just part of the standard operating procedures and that we have in place. But we have constant improvement with every deal that we go through. So on the nuts and bolts side of things, I feel like that's one thing that a lot of people are not doing, right? They'll roll out a new SOP per se, and okay, cool, that's it, and then they'll come back and revisit or tweak it or see where where it got improved. We have improvement sessions constantly every week, right? So we're always fine tuning and getting rid of excess weight and just making the process better. And the entire team is bought into it. For example, like right now, I mean, at this point, I'm not on the front lines when it comes to acquisitions, right? My team is. So they get to see a lot of the stuff that I don't see because they're on the front lines. They're out there, they're negotiating, they're seeing how many people are pounding on these people's doors, just stuff that I can't see from my end, right? Like when I got started, I used to go on average about 5 in-person appointments a day. So I was hitting 25 in-person appointments a week. I mean, that's a ton of conversations, but it's not it's not the same scenario. So I have to lean on them for their strengths. We hire people, and a lot of times we don't even let them perform, right? And I feel like that's one of the things that I focused well on. The other thing, I'm very people oriented. I like the team itself. Like again, they have buy-in, but there's also ownership on the improvement of the process. If it's not working, I mean, I can write it out, and so it makes sense in my head. But if it's not working out for the team, and it becomes too hard to follow, it's dead weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like those are some of the things that work well for me. And then follow three principles. Like one is radical transparency, the second one is extreme ownership, and the third one is people over profits. Everything that we do in the business goes back to those three things, right? So if there's a decision to be made, like, all right, cool, are we being transparent? With the team, with the sellers, with the buyers, with everybody. That's gonna fix a whole bunch of issues. Extreme ownership. Okay, if it's in my lane, it doesn't matter if it didn't happen. If I have something that that I know needs attention, like the bare minimum doesn't work here, right? We do a lot with a small group of people, but the reason for it is because we have extreme ownership over everything that's going on within our lanes. Granted, right? And people over profits. Like it's not. You don't screw up somebody else or a seller or a buyer just to make an extra buck. People are more important than that, right? So I feel like consistency is one of the things that in terms of having those practices, right, and actually enforcing them, not just being cool things that are slapped on a wall, but having that become part of that culture and adopted by the team is a big thing. It truly is. You can have the best mechanics, right, per se, but if you don't have the right fuel in the vehicle, like it's nothing's gonna matter.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm curious to ask about ownership. I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs that very much believe in ownership. I'm one of those people. I think the reason a lot of entrepreneurs naturally believe in that is because they own the business usually.
Yeah.
So like they feel what they're feeling, but like
It hurts.
yeah. So being an entrepreneur that believes in ownership, easy. Having a culture of a company where ownership is like at the top of what everybody believes in and how they act, a lot harder, right? So like just, and I guess this could apply to any of the three things you said, but like this, I'm taking that one as just like an example that I think most business owners at least have in common. What steps have you taken to have that actually become the culture and not just become something that you believe in?
One thing I learned early on was authorship creates ownership, right? So me bringing in, for example, even the cold callers, VAs, everybody everybody has a purpose, everybody has a mission in life. I feel like sometimes we can see, for example, a role like a cold caller role as like, oh, this is a less than role. It's disposable. It's but at the end of the day, like think about the person who's behind that role. If you make them realize that they're important enough in your business, right, they're going to bring that character in. If they don't, they're really not a fit for your company because they're looking for a different type of culture. And that's a simple solution, right? If it's not a culture fit, you find something else. But for example, when I develop one of the things, right, we have improvement sessions. When I'm developing, fine tuning and doing, just improvements altogether in the SOPs and the just overall process, even, sometimes on opinions of software providers and stuff like that we're going to use, I bring the team into it, right? They have buy-in on that. And I feel like a lot of times something as simple as, oh, my opinion matters, right, can create, that feeling behind it, right? That's one thing. Another thing that I've done over the years is I used to have a top three. So we have daily huddles. A lot of my team is virtual. We have daily huddles. They're 15 minutes long, and then every week we have an ops meeting, right? On the ops meeting, and we'll sprinkle in trainings here and there and whatnot through the week. But on the ops meeting, we'll go over. It used to be top three personal priorities. So I would have them come up with, what are your top three personal priorities? Nothing related to business. Don't tell me if you're a lead gen. Don't tell me that your personal priority is to generate more leads. No. What's your personal priority? Like, what are you working for right now? Like, is it a vacation? Is it a car? Is it a house? Is it, time? What are you working for, right? So having that personal factor, come in and helping them understand that it matters to us is a big thing, right, for me. So we would do goals and work on each other's goals at an individual level, at a personal level, not a company level, right? Company level, I have a massive scorecard that we keep track of and accountability and KPIs and metrics and all that stuff. But the people factor, people capital, I feel is the biggest thing that that sometimes gets left behind because we're looking at KPIs, but what, a lot of times we're forgetting about the person that runs, that side of the responsibility. And that one thing, I mean, I feel like help my team just, bond together, especially when you're virtual, right? When you're virtual, you don't have a lot of opportunities to collaborate, like in the bullpen or water jug conversations, or sitting down in the conference room and hashing stuff out. But when you're both working, meaning your employee and the company, towards a common goal for the employee, and even if that's just support, right? I'll give you an example. One of my VAs, she started working with me in 2018. Her goal in 2019 was to get her own house. She wanted to, have a house. She's in the Philippines, and so we all started rooting for her, creating, like opportunities for bonuses and stuff like that. She ended up moving into her house in 2021. I mean, that was a big, big win, right? So what do you think that does for the buy-in, right? For the ownership, for the, for the fact that, okay, like whatever comes my way is like, I matter here. And I think, I mean, we have a tendency of overcomplicating the culture, but at the end of the day, is like, make them feel they're important, right? Because they are.
Yeah. I mean, you make it sound super simple. It is something we brought on a new leader in the company recently, and that's one of the main things that I've learned from him. Management style is how much he cares about like the individual and their goals, regardless of how that interacts with their role at work, is insane. Right. And it's so easy because like I think the standard is just a thing. Like it's so easy to operate from a place of like, what do I expect out of this person, or what do I think they need to give me, and
right
towards those things, versus like considering that work is one of the largest things in their life, and really we're there to help them accomplish what they want to with their life. Like
they're spending more time with us than their own families sometimes. So
it's awful. Yeah. Often it's true. So, yeah, that's wild. Okay, so that makes sense. So if I'm understanding you right, like what's different about your operations, it seems like it's a lot about like how you build your culture that is really important to you, and that's building around your values, and you found quality ways to make that possible, like that meeting on Friday. So that's everybody in the company basically says like, these are my.
We used to have top threes. Now we go for a top one because it takes a long time. But we still have this one, this one segment, and we'll break it down. Like we'll go over scorecard. We'll go over another thing that I do when it comes to ownership is that even though we can, like, everything's automated, we have automatic KPIs and all that stuff, I still have them bring in their numbers for the week. Like actually, bring in, like they have to type in the numbers for the week. And what we do is we just verify them with the automated KPIs. It's not a redundancy. The reason I do that is because now it's them telling me how they did. It's not, if they're below on their count, right? For example, on their hits or their calls or whatever, right? It's them writing it out and acknowledging that by themselves, as opposed to me, hey, listen, dude, like you only, like you did 30% of what you were supposed to do. Now it's a reprimand. You know what I mean? So it's I guess it's a nicer way of keeping them accountable. And of course, like difficult conversations are going to happen. It's not, a playground, right? But you do mitigate a lot of that stuff.
That makes sense. I see how and this is something I've valuable for a while, because it's like, this is an example of where efficiency is not what's best in the business. Because I think naturally so efficiently. So I'm like, it's dumb to manually report something that can be automated. But you're totally right. Like I get it, because it almost feels like if the numbers are automated and they're in the background all the time, then as the employee, it feels like I never know when one of those numbers is going to create a problem for me.
And it's simple, right? Authorship creates ownership. If they're I don't know, they're supposed to hit 100 calls, right? And they only hit 20, and they're writing down 20 when they know the number that needs to be there is 100. And we're bending over backwards in the leadership space with the managers to help them through it, and we're collaborating. Now we have this collective environment where everybody's just everybody knows that we carry our weight, and they're not. Like, it's almost like a self-guilt trip. You know what I mean? So it's not. It's self-accountability. I know I feel shitty whenever I do, like, For example, I go back to my firefighter days, right? We used to have to do pre-plans. We used to have to do a couple things. And if 3 p.m. rolled over and I hadn't done my stuff, like, man, and somebody asked me, I just felt bad, right? Because I hadn't self-authored, so I didn't have that accountability in place. So I mean, that's a premise for that, but it works. I mean, it's I think it gets rid of a lot of the needless, finger pointing that happens a lot of times.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, changing gears a little bit. Let's just picture in your head, like, a typical entrepreneur, maybe in this industry, maybe in any industry. I guess at this level, it probably doesn't really matter what industry they're in. If you were to give your advice to that person on, like, obviously we can look at, like, how do you change the structure of the company and how do you push values of the company, and all that stuff is great, but it stems from the top, from the one person, right? So
Yeah.
what do you think is a path of growth that most entrepreneurs need to go down? Meaning, like, something that they should change about themselves that would make them more effective in their business.
Be curious. Be curious. I mean, hands down, the biggest thing. Yeah, take risks and have like we've heard the laundry list of things, right? Or accolades that an entrepreneur needs to have. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to being curious, man. I really do. It's think about it, right? If you're curious and you're in a room full of badasses, you're gonna have a lot of questions, and you're gonna start asking a lot of questions because you're curious, right? If you're doing something and in this box or this place that in and out, but you're curious, you're going to start thinking outside the box, and that's going to push you to a different conversation, to a different, something else that can be a catalyst for the next thing, right? Or the better thing. And we don't have that without curiosity. Curiosity is part of creativity, and as entrepreneurs, like, that's the one job that we have. We have to be creators, not just of content and all that stuff, but we have to be creators of opportunity for the people around us, and we can't do that if we're not curious about what's next, right? We're responsible of looking outside those walls, and you can't do that without curiosity.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think was it Albert Einstein said, I don't have any special talent. I'm only passionately curious.
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes. So,
Facts.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. That's but so I it's funny. I almost said I'm curious, like, when I was curious. No pun intended. But for you, like, what is curiosity not? Maybe that's one of the easier ways to say it. Or another way to say this is, like, what behavior might an entrepreneur have or do that demonstrates lack of curiosity that could actually work against them?
I think settling. There's variances to that, right? You may if you're settling, but you still have an itch, you still have a fire in your belly. I think that's a bad thing, because you're just settling. It's more of conformity, right? But if you were sitting in a space where you're comfortable, where you love the life around you, the time that you're spending, you have the people, you have the finances are well, you're in this counterbalance space where all your areas are being taken care of, and you're happy, right? You have that sense of joy that's evident. You wake up, you walk around with a smile, and you're winning by counting more smiles throughout your day than frowns. And it's like, okay, this is where I'm at. And I know people like that. I know a handful of people that are in that space, like, perfectly fine. And a couple of them are killing it on the million side, and some others, they're not, but they're completely happy, right? They're happy. They have their bases covered and everything. They're good. I feel when you get to a point where you're just sitting there because it feels like the safe thing to do. It feels like the comfort zone. I mean, we always hear about that, right? But I think that's what kills curiosity, right? Now, if you do have that fire in your belly, you have that curiosity, like that question, you feel it in your solar plex, and like, oh, there's more. Like, that's calling you out. It's screaming at you to pay attention to something else and be curious about life in a different way or fashion than where you're standing. And I feel like not listening to that cue can be one of the biggest mistakes that we can do as just human beings, not necessarily even entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, let me make sure I understand you. So the mistake people make is they basically, like you're saying, it's good to feel content and to come to like a more stable place, provided you actually feel that way. But too many people go there
Right.
without that way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, that I wanted to make the distinction, right? That there's nothing wrong with being content, being, happy and comfortable. Like the success is going to be, it's subjective. It's going to look different to different people. And if you get to a point where you're settling, right, and you're in this space, of joy and happiness, and you're fulfilled, you're thriving at an internal level, who cares what the outside world looks like, but you're feeling well and accomplished, like you're good, right? Like I'm not like those people don't even factor in. Like they're happy. They hit they're at the at the number one on the winning, what do you call it? The first place, second place, the races.
Podium.
Yeah, on the podium. Yeah. Okay. So they're winning. But then you have people that stop being curious because of a fear of failure, because of fear of rejection, because of just like I mean, I don't know how to do it. It's just, but then they have that, that fire in the belly, that there's something inside of them screaming that there's more to life, and they stop being curious because of something alternate. I feel like that's the type of behavior that will kill your curiosity, and at the end of the day it'll create remorse. I mean, it's crazy, man, but like people feel remorse about the things that they didn't get to do when they wanted to. They wanted to travel more. They wanted to do, I mean, I talk to, family members now that are, 70, 80 years old. Oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. And like, man, it's like, I don't want to get to that point, right? Because I feel like at some point or another, they stop being curious, they stop pushing for their dreams, and they stop pushing their potential and their limits to get to that place where they could have, smile and joy as 90% of the way they live.
Yeah, I totally hear you. That makes sense. I mean, the word that comes to mind for me, like curiosity, yes, but also courage. Like it's so easy to put yourself in the box that you've been in because you feel like that's where you belong, based on having been there. But you think like what makes like a visionary entrepreneur different from most people? It's that they can see more than just what's there in front of them, right? They can see the future that's different. But if you lose that,
and I feel like so I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. I agree with it to an extent, but I feel like sometimes you may not even be able to see what's there, right? But you suspect there's something there, and like you said, you have the courage to go after it and go find out. Yeah, it's like, oh, I mean, shit, man. I feel like there's something. There has to be something. Like something tells me there's something there. I can't see it, and I've walked that lane, plenty of times where I'm, I suspect there's something on the other side of taking that action, joining that group, making that call, putting myself or making this investment or whatever, right? I feel like there's something there, and not that I have it all dialed in and know the ins and outs of what's on the other side, but you have the courage enough curiosity to go, to go bet on it and bet on yourself while you're at it. So
you got to know. Yeah, I've heard it compared to like walking through fog. You can see just ahead of you, but you don't ultimately know where you're going.
Yeah.
You could believe that there's something there that's better than where you are right now.
Exactly.
You're willing to leave what you have now to go get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that was a fruitful question to ask you. I'm going to ask you the same question again. So once again, as an entrepreneur, if we were to say like one thing that the average entrepreneur, a second thing that the average entrepreneur could change about like their mindset or about their skills or about themselves that would yield better success in what they're looking for, what do you think it is?
I think, well, I mean, then, and it's going to link right up with curiosity. We have, investing in yourself. I mean, things didn't start happening, to me or for me until I started, buying books and reading. And when I say investing, I'm talking about time for self-reflection. I'm talking about finding out who you are, right? Having the awareness of what makes you feel good, what fires you up, what triggers you, what doesn't, and having that level of self-understanding. We look for mastery in all kinds of areas. This is what's so crazy to me. We look for mastery in all kinds of areas of life, right? In the finances, in the, I don't know, the martial arts, jiu-jitsu. Like we look to become better and better and better, at all kinds of things. And a lot of times we forget to look inwards and understand us, even, to the most basic level. So if I can give anybody, I guess the secondary advice from that curiosity is understand who you are, right? invest in yourself, and meaning time, love, attention. Get to a point where you understand to what triggers you, what fulfills you, what makes you wake up with that fire in your belly every morning, and pursue it. I mean, go after it. What else are we gonna do? Like, I mean, is there? I mean, I don't know. I know I'm gonna die someday. Like, from here to there, what else am I gonna do? You know what I mean?
Sure. Sure.
So win the battle through smiles, but we can't do that if we don't understand ourselves, right? So that self mastery portion, which I think it's an ever pursuing effort, is going to be at the top of the list.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with what you said, and I'm going to challenge you to share even more. I heard that advice for like ever since I became an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
At some point, it's just kind of like, oh, that's the thing that like people say. It didn't like mean anything. Over the past, let's just say, year or 18 months, I feel like I've come to understand that better, and I feel like I've made a lot of progress. But that's after like 7 years of really like trying, and I'm sure I still have a far way to go.
You know why that happens? And I've had I've spent time with it too. Like, why didn't this matter? Like, why wasn't I doing this when I was 20? I'm 42 now. Now I get it. But why? It's not that difficult of a concept, right? But mentally, we're just in different stages, right? For example, I can tell you very much that I was on a survival mode through my first businesses.
That was
I went
true.
through survival mode, 1,000% chasing the dollar, right? So what happens when you're in survival mode? You're the only thing that's gonna click in your radar. It's gonna be the stuff that's gonna allow you to survive, right? So that next deal, that next contract, that cutting the overhead. So our attention span focuses on anything that's gonna give us survival. I mentioned that I would hit the goal on the financial side, and then I would just move the goalpost, right? Because I was still operating under that survival mentality. Like, oh, I didn't understand. I was still going super hard to kind of like get out of survival mode, but I was already survival financially. Yet I was still operating under the same premise. My mental wiring wasn't, hadn't changed. It hadn't evolved yet. So it took a minute for it to catch up to where I was at, right? Self-reflection kicks in. So after that, like, all right, cool. I started looking at scaling. I started looking at self-fulfillment. So that's when I understood, time matters. So I went from this survival mode to changing my priorities to time and lifestyle, right? It's like, oh, cool. Now I have more time and I can, have this lifestyle. And I started embracing different things, and we start changing as individuals. And then after that, you hear like, all right, cool. I have some vacations and whatnot. Now I can, my mental bandwidth is a little bit more, I have more vacancy in my brain, right? And now self-awareness. Okay, how can I grow as an individual? And then contribution kicks in. How can I be a better person for those around me? And just different things start hitting and landing, I feel like, at different stages of the journey. And I mean, I think that's exactly what happens. So sometimes you'll get it, but it's not going to resonate with you because you're at a different stage, right? And like, for example, for me, that's a place that matters, that makes sense in my head. And then you talk to other people who are ahead of us, and they're at this whole different plane of understanding and priorities, and life is like, wow. I still can't even comprehend what that feels like, looks like, and yet, because I'm just not in that space yet. But I feel that's why that happens, right? We have different priorities, we have different stages of life, and that growth path is very different. Everybody's going to be at a different stage. I mean, that's the same reason why sometimes you'll pick up a book, like, this is nice to read. And then you set it down, right? Or it didn't do anything for me. And then you pick up the same book 5 years later, 10 years later, it's like, oh shit, this thing is mind boggling. You know what I mean? Different stages. And I feel like that's why that happens. And yeah, it's not a coincidence, dude, that most of the people doing, good stuff or crushing it in their space and having some ownership of their life, really, like, are doing some of the similar stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to self-awareness, understanding who we truly are, and what makes us, smile, what makes us, tick, what makes us move forward.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with everything you said. I think for me, it was mostly like it feels like a lot of the lessons that you have to learn at the beginning in entrepreneurship are the same lessons you need to unlearn to then get to the next stage.
Yeah.
At some point, it's like I have zero revenue in my business, and unless I can just learn to work really hard,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna push anything forward, right? And you learn like
Right.
I personally became like a master of like personal productivity. Like I got to the point where like when I started to do this whole like hiring people to replace you in the business, it took me like 8 hires to replace me because I was doing 8 people's jobs.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like eight people in the company. I mean like without scaling revenue, I had to hire like 8 people to
Yeah.
remove me from a specific seat in the company because
Mops. Yeah.
I was doing that much work. I don't know if you've ever been there with any.
Oh, dude. Yeah. No, trust me, man. Like I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's
And
wild.
and it's pretty interesting, right? Like now think about, for example, you being that busy, and I've been in that same boat too. And like the bandwidth to think about, oh, I'm gonna sit down and meditate. Like who has time for that? Like it's not, you know what I mean? I'm gonna sit down and do some self-reflection. I'm gonna think about personal growth. I'm like at that point, honestly, all we're thinking about is like, shit, man, I just gotta make this work.
Yeah,
and,
100%.
yeah, exactly. So I feel like that's why the disconnect is there, and it's almost like an earned path. I feel so.
Yeah.
If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
the thing that made a difference for me, I'm curious if this is like similar to your journey or not. I want to hear about like your specific time. For me, is that I was just kind of like slowly moving more that direction, slowly moving more that direction.
Yeah.
Like, I think I read in some book, I just remember the words. They said overcompensate to compensate.
Yeah.
I'm just like slowly like moving just a little bit further this way. I just decided like I'm going to take everything off my plate and to someone else, and then I'm going to see what I do after that. So I kind of had like a week where I had like nothing on my plate. Like it's officially all been delegated. It took me obviously some time to like hire the people to make that possible. And then at that point, I did like intentionally adding things back on. But I had to like almost empty the plate completely and then just put on what I want there rather than look at the plate and take off what I don't want on it. Because every time I did that, I still ended up with way too much stuff on it versus starting from zero and intentionally adding a few things made it really nice for me.
Yeah, the power of saying no, man, it's big right there. One of the things that, and I don't know if it happened to you, but one of the things that I see happening when that goes through, it's that when I'm working with my one-on-one students in building the business on that side, we start delegating a lot. And again, it's like the prime spot where people are doing a lot of the stuff that they don't need to be doing. It's just tasky stuff. It's delegatable. It's, we can automate. We can do a lot of things, right? So we start working through that. Sure enough, we start going through that, and there's a couple of things that kick in. A couple of weeks down the road, they feel like they're not doing anything. Like I feel like things are, I don't know, like I'm missing stuff. There's something that I'm missing because they're not going crazy doing 1,000 things and they're delegated, right? That's one thing. And then the other one is almost like a sense of guilt. I feel guilty because I'm not super crazy busy, and I'm like, I'm not burning myself with tasky stuff. Like, no, we have to learn how to live that way. The only reason, honestly, man, like to me, it was a very situational, trigger. But it was the burnout. I didn't get to it passively, right? I didn't get like, I'm happy you did it. You started delegating because if you didn't hit that stage of burnout, dude, you save yourself so much grief. It's just a dark place to be in. But I got to that point where it was like, man, I realized like it's almost like, dying as an entrepreneur and coming back, later. Like, oh, you realize like there's a lot of stuff that I'm not gonna put up with. Things change but yeah, there's always a catalyst, right? So if you're smart enough, like you're gonna see it coming and they're gonna prevent it. Otherwise, you're gonna go head on into it. But either way, it's like it's bound to happen whenever you're growing a business. And adding meat on the bones of that vision that we all build.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Rafael, for everything you've shared. If anybody after listening to this wants to get a hold of you in any way, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm really active on social media at Rafael Cortez CEO. So Instagram, DM me, I respond to my messages on my team. So yeah, they're pretty much.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. Thank you for taking the time, and I hope that listening to this got as much value as I did from this. And I'm sure I'll see you again soon. For everybody listening, I'll see you next week.